Hello there! Today we're going to be looking at the Castille longsword that I've made a very long time ago. So this one right here is actually one of my very first longsword that I've ever got, and this is before I ever really tried longsword. I actually got this before I got every single one of my steel sword. So there's a bit of an interesting history to this sword, and this is a very interesting story because most of the parts that you see on here is actually self-made. When I started Hema, there's not a lot of components that you can just buy off the shelf and you can just buy your fetish swords and it's cool, and there are. But then they're often not really cool, or the balance not what I wanted, and something's often wrong. So I kind of figured, why don't I make one myself? And so here it is. So you can look at this Castille fetish swords right now. I actually bought the blade originally just by the blade itself. There's no other component, and I've only purchased the blade. You actually can no longer buy one of these feather blade anymore on the official website. I don't know why, but you can actually buy the whole sword itself, and you can buy the regular line item. Maybe I just like looking at the actual website itself, but you know what? I really can't find these. And after this sword has been used so often by, ironically, other people, it's still fantastically amazing. I barely see any dents onto it. There's some obvious marks that are in battle, but then it's still smooth as all hell. I actually never sanded this sword once, and it stands to the test of time. So when I bought this, I actually bought it with the actual maximum length. So however you see how long this is, that's how long the tang is. Main reason why is because back then, when I started Hema, there was no real concern for the length of the handle, but of course there's just the limitation on the length of the blade. Give me a second. And so let's look into the spec itself. Right here, it's the blade itself, to be honest, is really not overly too long. It's that similar length of, I think it's a rapier blade length. Of course, the feather length. The total length itself for the blade is actually 38 inch, which hilariously enough is very similar to most, the single-handed sword that we have. And historically, that's kind of the length of longsword that they have in there. It always floats around the 36 and 38 inch, some maybe 40. And rarely do they exceed that. I don't really know why. It's just how a lot of museum pieces are, like that. And the tang itself, I remember I got the longest tang as possible, and this guy is actually 12.5 inch long tang. The whole blade itself, now remember, most of these parts I actually made it myself so that I can have the maximum balance as I can, and this flows as quick as it possibly can. I can even happily use this one-handed and it's still a-okay because, I like nimble sword that hits well. And so, let me put it on scale. So the entire sword itself, it weighs, the whole thing just weighs around 1,250 grams, which of course for a long sword is very light. Now let's look at some components. The blade itself flexes, of course, absolutely fantastically as of most Castille, and the point of balance we are looking at roughly around somewhere just past the shield a little bit. And so that, the point of balance, if you really care about that, it comes up around 3 inch or so. And of course, just one more, we're going to look at the point of repercussion. Let me just tighten that up. So we smack it, it's about right here. So the point of repercussion is going to be roughly around at, of course, the 1/3 of the blade, which is kind of where you want it. And we have to do wobble tests, similar, still right there as well. And of course, this is just to show dynamic chart, to be honest. And so if we look at this, so it's a very lively blade if we have to look into it. It is not floppy at all, and it is incredibly fast. So, couple of different components. The first part is that the component itself, I actually put on a plastic pommel onto this because I thought that pommel strike is a thing, and I thought that having a steel pommel is not so well. But what happens is that I actually want to reduce the weight as much as I can. So this came, actually not it came, I actually bought it, is that it on this one right now, it's coming with a plastic pommel from Red Dragon. And of course, as you can see, it is a very typical, let me turn on that light. Okay, I'm just going to turn on the ring light. So we look at it, it's a very classic Red Dragon pommel. that we all really much have. Very, very classic, nothing fancy. But what happens is that on the inside, it is actually an M8 nut. What does it really mean? Well, nothing really. Aside from knowing that an M8 coarse thread nut, coarse thread just kind of means that the thread itself, it's 1.5 M. So technically, the whole nomenclature, the whole naming system is M8 times or dash whatever you want at 1.5. Anyways, so the cool thing is that as an optional piece, they also come in the steel pommels. So the light pommel itself, just a plastic pommel, this guy weighs about 61 grams. The heavy steel pommel, holy crap, this steel pommel weighs 452, I'm gonna measure that again, it's stupid. Nope, this pommel right here, 452 grams. 60 something, that's insane. There's a reason why I put this on. And of course, if you are already having one of the Elcom pommel or any other pommel that fits an M8 nut, which is one of these little steel pommel that we use for a basket hill, they of course fit just fine because they are technically all M8. So that's it for the first part. Second is going to be the grip. Of course, I have a little washer right here. Let's not worry about that part. But next part is going to be the grip. I have a lot to talk about with this grip, and I personally really like this grip myself. I carved this grip myself, and let me get some better lighting here because I want to show you about this grip that I made. So this grip itself is actually very interesting grip. How well, why is because, well, it's the first grip that I made. And it still is one of my absolute favorite handle grip for every two-handed weapon, and I kind of figure I should really just copy this design nonetheless. So we're gonna start off. The inside core is actually made from a piece of flamed maple. Doesn't mean much, not really. Flame maple, they're not overly too rare. We find them at a handrail for most of our Canadian housing. Well, in that case, they are very hard material. So I figured that if I ever take a hit to it, they will take a few hits and it's still okay. It's going to start off as, of course, a regular rectangular section that perfectly fits the handle. On the bottom, it tapers nicely on the bottom. So then it fits any glove really well. And if you can notice it, the top actually start off as a rectangular section that's slightly beveled outward. And on the bottom, it's actually a circle. It's because when you hold it, whatever your pinky is, if you naturally hold your hand out, normally, just randomly hold over your hand out, you're gonna notice the top is actually rectangles and bottom are actually circles. So in that, you want to exactly what made your handle like that. What's really interesting about this is that I actually, instead of just beveling the whole thing, I actually have a V tapering section right here. It's kind of hard to see, but I start shaving this down. So the whole thing is actually get shaving down on the two sides, and I purposely left a triangular section right here to about the halfway point, and it meets to the halfway point. So then this becomes a flat section where there's a bevel on the side. Why? Your thumb. So when you put your thumb onto it, it perfectly fits on there perfectly. And of course, we're gonna see a lot of these little rips on here because they give you much better purchase, especially when you're trying to do one-handed stuff. This purchase helps so much. This is achieved actually by, well, badminton grip. Badminton grip actually comes in little foam that's on the inside, and after I lace out, it creates these wonderful grip. After that, the whole thing is finished off with genuine leather on top. Well, it's because, well, I skinned the couch and I have a lot of leather and I like this color, so hey, free leather, and I thought they make perfect handle grip, and they do. So, and of course, traditionally, if we were to look at my Keviten spadone, they are actually very identical in length. It's because I kind of want to make a spadone when I was making the longsword, and of course I want to make it tournament legal, so I kind of did both ways. And of course, we notice that they actually have the similar rib feature on the handle. They have almost a similar handle. The pommel, of course, the same, and the handguard, of course, in a similar length. So let's look at the handguard itself. Now this gets even more interesting. The handguard itself, let me slide the handle back on so you see a little bit better. Is that I purposely made the handguard. I actually made myself. It's a piece of thick 1/4-inch mild steel that I of course grinded, sanded. The whole thing is very smooth, and look at this one really interesting feature. This is rare. No sword ever have this because I made it myself. Of course, they are technically two rectangular bar, but if you look at the middle, it actually cave dips in a little bit. Why? Because when you put your thumb there, it's so smooth. It drives me nuts when you're trying to have some sort of interaction with your sword and the handle, and the handguard gets in the way. Worse, scratches you. That bugs the crap out of me, so I purposely grind that down by hand with a file, and I take that material off until I get the desired length. This has been, of course, in many tournaments, get whacked so many times. There's barely a dent on it. This thing is just so freaking strong. So I'm actually really proud of this. So let's go to the handguard itself. Of course, it is a piece of mouse tail, as I mentioned. It's quite long. Well, why do you see these little nubs on here? It's because they are actually quite sharp. I made them sharp just because I thought it was cool, and that's what they looked like back then. But unfortunately, in tournament setting, they don't allow these little sharpie points. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take these off, and I'm going to heat that up, and I'm going to hammer it down until it mushrooms back out a little bit. So then, it creates a little bit almost like one of these right here, spatulated. So then it will be legal for hematology use and safe for sparring use, and we don't have to rely on these ever again. So I'm going to take out both right now. Not that it really matters, it doesn't matter. So, onto the actual blade tang itself. As I mentioned, this blade, it's still, holy crap, still very straight. It's actually really nice still. In any case, so the blade itself, I measured the length of the blade already. It was like what, 40 inch? Yeah, 40 inch. So let me do it again. Yep, 38 inch. And the handle and the tang itself, the entire tang, it comes to 13 inches. And what is actually really interesting about Castille that I don't see in many blades is that in many swords, there are weak spots in, well, of course, swords. And that's one right here. That is actually a Frederick blade. It's Sam from Sword Gear. Any case, what happens is that, I'm just using an example. Very standard blade, this is how exactly blades are actually, well, traditionally they're made. You get a tang, you may have a ricasso, that's the ricasso on the blade. Frederick does Italian, so I guess he has ricassos. But look at this, that's called shoulder. The shoulder, it's like the neck and then the blade, and you have like a human shoulder right here. Those are shoulders. The blade comes out and then it comes back in to that point, and then it becomes the tang. Now what happens is that Frederick did a really good, Sam did a really good job rounding these, so then the stress point, when a sword is receiving a hit, there's a force that's going to be applied to the blade that travels in, and the weak part usually is at the shoulder or the neck, whatever you want to call it. If this is not done correctly, or it's done really sharp, like this is rounded, is perfect, like this, that's rounded, that's good. But what happens if it's not done correctly, that's where the shearing happens. It's because the force coming this way, it stops at your handle because you're holding on to it, and so the force would oppose, and then that snaps. Either that, or another very interesting thing is that it's actually all the weight distribution comes all the way through the blade, right through the tang, and it pops the tang right off on the threaded part. Because once again, we're going to look at the stress risers. The stress is going to be created by these very sharp little threaded tang right here. Every one of these little teeth are technically stress points. So in that case, let's not worry about that part. But the reason why I brought that was because on the Castille one, this blade itself, look at it. There is an extra reinforcement piece right here. So that makes it tremendously stronger because the force coming in, instead of coming in on a 45 degree, the force when it takes a hit, well, the shield already absorbed a lot of their hits anyway, so that was helpful. I love the force. But then what happens is when the force traveling, when I'm holding a blade, I take a hit, the force travels down. It travels down into, of course, getting absorbed by the shield itself, and then the force coming down the blade will get actually transferred into these little reinforcement pieces. With these guys, it makes the blade tremendously stronger. Now, another part is that we can look at a tang. Look at it, it's still sitting on a 45. Remember, force when a force being coming in, when it hits, it's gonna hit coming down on an angle. It doesn't go straight down. It actually has more science behind it. I'm not smart. I fail science, so that's not worried about that part. However, I understand when swords break because I break 2 to 3 a year. So what happens is that these forces are actually being there's actually reinforcing pieces right here. They don't go on a sharp angle. Once again, 45 degree before we get to a whole inch and a half of tang. That tang is really thick. That ain't gonna break. So just the blade itself, it's already a really interesting piece of, well, ingenuity. I had to say blade ingenuity. And of course, one last feature is that look at it. It's a spatulated tip right on the top. Now I purposely like spatulated tip right here, so it actually flares out thicker compared to the blade. I very much prefer spatulated tip compared to roll tip, or worse, no tip at all. It's because I find that with a bigger surface area, even if whatever safety tip on my sword come off, at least I know that there is a much greater surface area on top. So even if I land a thrust or whatever, it has less impact for very little bit of, well, surface area. It has more surface area to distribute my thrust into my opponent, so then I don't have the guilt of, well, killing one of my friends. Or worse, breaking the equipment, I have to pay for it. At that point, I don't think I mind killing my friends at that point. But then I'm gonna cut that out. Maybe. So, I lost spatulated tip. Now, the other options on a Castille blade you can get are going to be the roll tip. Roll tip, of course, being, well, it's a tip. Actually, I have one right here. It's like this. That's a roll tip. A roll tip is going to be a tip that actually, well, kind of rolls back over. But what happens is that if you are fencing someone and they somehow have exposed skin, these roll tips are essentially acting like little ice cream scoop because there's a hollow cavity right here and they are quite sharp. If you land a roll tip on the side and it's gouge skin out, Dana told me that, Dana, our head instructor, of course, had told us scary story that it happens. I'm like, no, that's stupid. It would never happen until I saw it myself. Holy God, it was scary. It was really scary. There was a lot of blood. So let's not do that, okay? In any case, spatulated tip is still my favorite. The last tip that you can actually get, which of course Castille do make, is actually a blunt tip. So of course in my Keviden feather Keviden spadone right here, the tip doesn't get wider at all. It just kind of terminate at, well, around the tip. These are probably the worst, by the way. Okay, so getting back to the blade itself, the blade itself, the entire blade, we are coming to. Give me a second. I'm just gonna let my little weight thing scale load. The blade itself, it's only 690 grams. 690 grams for a blade of this size. It is quite amazing. So in this comparison, for most of the blade that we use, meaning the armor class sparring blade, which is called a Manitoba blade that we have, it's on every one of our basket hill, steel basket hill. Those blades come in at roughly around 435 or so grams, somewhere around 430, 440, whatever it is. And the latest Castille small feather blade, which is meant for single-handed use, come in roughly around 416, 420 grams. So for a whole longsword blade, another 200 and somewhat grams, that's not a lot of weight for, of course, two-handed use. Of course, if I can just use this, I would actually like to put this on an arming blade or whatever. In any case, so getting back to the so what the heck's the handguard? Where'd I put that thing? Oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to put everything back in because, of course, we finished seeing the actual blade itself. So assembling it, of course, everything slides in very easily. And of course, optional, and here's one more thing. If you don't think there's enough handle, it comes with elongated pommel. This is a really long pommel. Where's my tape here? Okay, so this pommel, normal pommel, the first pommel that you saw, the plastic one, that one come in at roughly around 2.5 inch in length. And of course, the elongated pommel come in at 5 inches. Why do we need more pommel? Well, It's because if you really want to fight greatsword, then you put this on and you cheat a little bit. And now most greatsword, they do recommend you to have something at about chin height, or if not, even taller than you are. So somewhere at about chin height, you can then convert your longsword to doing, of course, well, longsword stuff. You can also convert it into doing spadone stuff, which is the first pommel I showed you. Or you can convert it into a greatsword. Now this comes in at a whopping 55 inches, meaning that's like 4.5 feet. That's a lot of sword, right? Even after putting all these on, if you were to turn this little monstrosity into, well, essentially at this point in legal spadone right now, or a greatsword, it's only at 1,260 grams, which is not a lot compared to the other one. It's only like another, well, 30 grams. So, in any case, so that right here is, of course, the modular longsword that I've created, and I still like it. Now the question is, why the heck am I selling this thing if it's so good? Well, as we all know, I don't do longsword. And of course, the only time when I actually do longsword is when I'm doing bolognese or Italian bolognese, which is Italian plays. And they're technically no contact, mostly for shows, or I'm doing it for class purposes. And if I'm doing something like this, I would then, of course, have my beautiful Cavitin spadone, which is more appropriate for my use. They essentially are the same thing. I just have too many and I don't want to keep so many around, right? And of course, if not, as a part of my many other longsword, I also have the purple heart spadone sparring sword. So I am just using this instead of the other one. Now, of course, the spadone sparring sword, that guy is around 1,200 something grams, and this one comes in at 1,500 grams. So this one is 200 grams or 250 grams more than the other guy. And of course, if we were to look at the sizing of everything of it, my spadone and the elongated pommel do come in at roughly around the same height. So I kind of have two of the identical thing. So, meaning that this guy, my first baby, I am open to selling it only to people who truly cares about the art of HEMA or my employees. And so, what else comes with the sword? You actually get to choose one of the 3 pommels, or you can buy all 3 or 4 or 5 if you want, because I have many pommels. However, this is a very special sword, so it comes with a very special accessory. This one right here, it is a specifically made custom, I made it, scabbard for this feather, and I purposely make it so thick so that if I want to wear it for show, it looks like I'm having a very cool, impressive blade inside my scabbard. So I can then use it for Renaissance fair, I can use it for shows, and I can use it for show and tell, whatever I want, right? It looks like there's a true purpose sword in there, and none would know the wiser, which is great. So, the scabbard right here is also made from another piece of flame maple. I just have a lot of them lying around back then. And of course, it is wrapped in genuine leather. It comes in 2 sections right here because my leather was not long enough. But the reason why there's another ridge right here, one is of course because there's 2 pieces of leather, but what happens is when you're actually wearing a sword, you have 2 attachment points. First attachment point, which comes with the belt as well. This actually comes with the whole belt assembly, so you can wear this already. The belt assembly comes here, but then you actually have another loop that loops right here. And with the ridge right here, it locks in, it doesn't move everywhere. So you actually have one belt here, and actually holds, that's how your sword is being held. So there is actually a functional piece to this. And of course, it comes with a cute little resin gem. This resin gem is made by my dear friend local in Canada, and I just stuck it on because it's cool. So, what else does it come with it? Now, I know there's a lot of accessories, and there's actually more accessories coming. So, for those who are not really a fan of the handguard that I made, and I think it's still the best handguard I've ever made, but if you are a little bit more fancy with a little bit more money, you can actually get a custom handguard. So what happens is that for a while now, I have been tinkering on with different metal, and I got an induction heater, and it has been the best thing ever. So I've actually got these wrought iron pieces, which of course I can polish and all that. This is actually made for railing. It's actually quite heavy, but I will take the weight down. I'm curious, one of these, how heavy is the handguard? I'm curious now. Oh, this handguard is only 400 grams. It's actually not that much. It's actually really light. But what happens is that it comes with these beautiful scalping right here. If you can see this, it comes with these little scalping right there. And actually flares out a little bit. Now, why is this so important and why do I want to put this on the handle? Well, it's because first, I don't have sharp points anymore. And I can straighten this piece out so that this whole piece is this whole thing is gonna unravel itself so it becomes a straight piece, and I can add that guard into it. So then what happens is that it will then create a handguard of roughly around that long. So it's almost at your shoulder's width. Why is that important? It's because as the Italian nerd that I am, I want to create one more sword. And of course, it is another Italian. Well, technically this is a German sword, okay? So this is a German battle sword made by Fabio Deltin, Master Fabio Deltin. And yeah, I'm a huge nerd of it. Sorry, I call him Master. But what happens is I look at these flaring on the end. And that's what I'm trying to create. I'm trying to create a very simple straight guard. Not with this little triangular section. I'm not that good yet. But then it's going to have a straight guard and it will flare out like that. And that just looks impressive. So, and of course, if we look at the height of it, it's actually the same length as, well, the longsword that we're looking at today. It's the exact same identical length. And of course, like I said, this is a war battle sword. You technically are not supposed to use this in a civilian setting because you're totally going to get arrested, even back then. So, but then we are still able to create something of, well, multiple different functions and multiple different, I guess, category of swords with just one modular sword. So this actually had a really good idea to begin with, and we're still winning. So, and of course, all in all, this thing is way too heavy. This thing is like, this thing is like 2,500 something grams, but that's its purpose because it's meant for, well, wartime use. So, well then, all in all, thank you so much for watching this video. This one right here, remember, it is the supposed to be bare blade version of the Castille feather blade that I still can't find anymore, with a highly customized and highly modular assembly piece that we have. Of course, once again, it has up to two different handguard. You can choose to if you want the other one or not for a little bit extra cost. Of course, it comes with this hard maple completely wrapped handle. 3 different handles, 3 different pommels. You get elongated, short, and of course you get a very heavy metal pommel if you like. What exactly is a heavy metal pommel for? Because I really didn't talk about this guy much. Well, if you are to unscrew this and you throw it into your opponent and they're so happen to be wearing a helmet or not wearing a helmet, you might actually knock them out before you finish them with your sword. And of course, yes, it does come with the scabbard as well. And for many times now, this sword has been in, of course, sparring situation, absolutely a-okay. I have used this in harness fighting, which is fighting in armor. And I do like it how at the last 1/3 of it, it's still a little bit flexible, so it's safe, but it is stiff enough so that when I want to try half swording technique, it functions perfectly fine. And of course, this has been proven many times to be hella tournament legal. We've used this at Frost and Blade, we have used it on Gathering of the Blade, which is the same thing as Berry, well, they're both Berry tournaments up here in Canada. And of course, we have also used this in Swordmeister in Montreal. So, once again, a ready to go longsword for anyone who is ready to start the longsword adventure. If you're interested, let me know, comment below, or well, it's not hard to find me, just DM me and send me a message on WhatsApp or text me, whatever you want to find me. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope yourself have a wonderful evening. See ya!